On one hand, we have some positive things that we need to talk about directly, but there is a huge risk, and in my opinion, that's the only reason why we are not much over 1,000 now with Bitcoin, because there are still too many fears in the market right now. But before we go any further, you know what to do. Leave the video a like and a comment. Because especially in these tough market phases, I really rely even more on your support. Friends, it's very positive that we are slowly convincing most of the bears here. The bears had their chances and pushed the prices down nicely. But right now, volatility is generally decreasing, and generally there is less leverage in the market. You can slowly notice that some are exiting the markets. This could further indicate that the market leaders are now ready to plan the next move more quickly and that they are really looking to bring volatility back into the market so that we can get more leverage and people back into the market. Nevertheless, we are still in a chronic upward trend. Of course, it depends on what happens in the near future because there are extremely positive news. For example, the M2 money supply. I've already shown it to you in the last few days. The M2 money supply correlates with our Bitcoin by almost 10 weeks. And that's why I'm writing this down. 10 weeks, then it's shifted by 10 weeks. And then we can roughly aim for when we will see the breakout here. It should start happening here in the next week or the week after that we see the breakout with Bitcoin and that we are following the M2 money supply. The M2 money supply is also extremely important for Bitcoin. It's very, very positive that we are currently correlating so closely and that we are currently really seeing this massive upward trend in the M2 money supply. And I found that interesting again. The correlation is most accurate after 107 days. Here, it has been mathematically calculated how Bitcoin follows the M2 money supply. And the correlation, as I said, is most identical after almost 3 months. Here, he also pointed that out again. After almost 3 months, we really are running quite identically. Here, he also tested it again after 75 days. It was already going, and after 45 days, it was at its weakest. And that's why it's really interesting. And to be honest, we have to say at this point that this M2 money supply is the most positive thing we've seen in recent years. In combination with this here, because on Polymarket there are already bets that we will see quantitative tightening by the end of May. And that's really so damn positive. I think most people, they don't understand it at all, because the Fed has been tightening money since 2022. Money has been taken out of the markets the whole time. Accordingly, our Bitcoin can't perform. Money has been made harder all this time to fight inflation. But of course, that also means we have no money for risk assets. That would then change. By May, we will definitely see a quantitative easing. That would be extremely positive. In the USA, there is an expansion of the money supply. In combination with the expansion of the M2 money supply, what could possibly be more positive than this? Honestly, this is the best thing we've seen in recent years. And the most important thing, especially for Bitcoin, in my opinion, that's definitely more important and better than just Donald Trump. Still, we have a huge problem here, currently. And we must not ignore this problem, downplayed. And indeed, the risk of recession in the USA has significantly increased recently. I mean, in February, we were still at 22%. We now have a probability of a recession of almost 40%, which is a huge problem here too. Because all this monetary expansion is of no use to us if we slide into a recession. Because in a recession, we simply have no growth, we have people who continue to become poorer, and so on. None of this is of any use to us. Additionally, we also saw Michael Saylor bought Bitcoins again yesterday, and quite honestly, these Bitcoins that he bought, that was truly a disgrace, and that was just 3 days ago. But 3 days ago, he bought Bitcoin worth $11 million. And that's ridiculous. Look at what kind of purchases he has made here. $1 billion. Here again, 500 million. Here, 1.5 billion. And now he's only buying for $10 million. That's probably because we've fallen. And because Michael Saylor is simply from the banks, he's not getting any more loans. That's really a tough sign for him right now, because I've shown you before, if the Michael Saylor bubble were to burst, it would be extremely dangerous. The fact that he isn't getting any more loans right now is probably also because the banks are a bit anxious about the recession and are being more cautious for the time being. All of this would, of course, change if we do not see a recession. But I have a feeling that this fear of recession is being deliberately created, even by people like Donald Trump. Because, I mean, people talk about the recession on Twitter and so on all the time. Donald Trump has talked about it a bit. Trump himself imposed these tariffs and so on. And of course, he's creating uncertainty in the markets with that. And I think that's exactly what he wanted to do. I think he wanted to push this fear of recession a bit. so that people become a little more uncertain, allowing him to better control the markets. If we don't see a recession, then this year will be one of the best years for the crypto market because we're seeing a loose monetary policy in the US and a huge expansion in the M2 money supply. What could be more positive? There are some really important things here, but there is still this fear of recession. If that fear didn't exist, I'm almost sure we would already be over $100,000 for Bitcoin right now. Then there's the FOMC meeting tonight, and that would be very interesting. This is where it will be decided how our future might look moving forward. It's 99% clear that we won't see an interest rate cut, and that's not a problem. It's already priced in, so we don't need to worry about it. What Jerome Powell says is much more important. He will tell. If he will clearly mention here that we will see a loose monetary policy in the future, and that we will see in the near future, perhaps on the 7th, May, or 18th, June, then if we see an interest rate cut, that would be damn positive. That's why what he says is much more important than what actually happens. Because it's pretty clear that we won't see an interest rate cut. But since the markets have already priced that in, it's not a problem. So definitely keep your eyes open today at 8:30 p.m. It's probably going to be volatile again. What we're currently seeing is that Binance has increased its Ethereum holdings by over $600 million. And that's just this week. That's also a very bullish sign, really extremely important, because we've shown you in the last few months how Binance has completely manipulated the Solana price with Wintermute, for example. It's nice to see that they're currently buying a lot of Ethereum because that will also help drive the price of Ethereum up. These are just major players in the market who clearly know a lot more. They simply steer these markets, and that's why we can't fight them anyway. That's why we can just anticipate what they do. Otherwise, it's going to be a very exciting week. There are positive as well as negative things, which I still find very interesting at the moment. That we are probably now slowly reaching the bottom for our Bitcoin. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the bears are getting weaker. We've just experienced the biggest downside trend. It could slowly start to go up again because we're also seeing another Bitcoin retest on the RSI, what in the past has helped us rise nicely again. And in the last 3 days alone, we've seen huge ETF inflows again of nearly $600 million. And that's very positive because we've only had ETF outflows in the last few weeks. It's really nice to see that we have inflows again of about 200-300 million per day. That's really, really good because these institutional investors obviously have the big money here. It's really nice that they're buying again. In relation, we have about as many longs as shorts, so it's becoming more balanced here as well. And the open interest, it's slowly decreasing. That means there are fewer and fewer leverage positions in the market. And I think exactly in such market phases, the market makers will ensure that some volatility comes back in. That people are coming back, that people are getting back on the train just to keep everyone engaged. The market makers obviously want to maintain this high volume. And accordingly, I believe that the next few weeks will definitely be volatile. It's going to be exciting days, exciting weeks. Tonight is going to be very interesting. In the speech and otherwise, friends, thank you for watching, and I would say see you next time. Bye.